Hi Cassandra, it's great to have you here. Me being in India, as it is Ganesh Chaturthi, and thank you for considering this invite to talk about resurrection of ancient goddess wisdom across all cultures. I welcome you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite. I'm honored.
So, quickly going into the first part of our interview, could you please tell me a little about yourself and the work around goddess research, goddess culture research you have been doing?
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd. I also call myself the daughter of the Fates. That's a long story we can get into on another day. But I am the founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence located here in Los Angeles, California. And but I am also an acupuncturist. I have a background in a multiplicity of systems of traditional medicine from different cultures. I have 2 years of Ayurveda under my belt, um, as well as traditional Chinese medicine, African holistic health, Native American healing rituals and modalities. The list goes on and on. I've been a practicing healer for officially 20 years and unofficially, because I have children and I'm automatically become the nurse and the caretaker, 30 years. Um, as a spiritual person, as a spiritual worker, as an ordained minister here in Los Angeles, and I had been a devotee of a West African spiritual tradition for 15 years. Um, I you know, began this journey with the goddess um, officially in 2000, I'd say 14-ish. A little longer than that because Ifa, even though Ifa, is a patriarchal tradition, it is the only tradition that I became aware of that attempted to place some significance on the divine feminine in the form of the Orisha, right? So I became a devotee in 2010, 2009, and but still functioning in that tradition in the very kind of narrow patriarchal ritualistic practice of the tradition. It wasn't really until 2014 that I started getting really heavy into the goddess aspect of that tradition. And in 2014, a friend of mine, who I'd been a political organizer with was for some time, many years, told me that I should read the book The Great Cosmic Mother. I put up a lot of resistance. I did in the beginning, but eventually I read the book and it blew my mind. It and it appealed. The reason it blew my mind is because it wasn't my concern, and the reason that I rejected reading the book initially is because the title, The Great Cosmic Mother Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth, sounded super esoteric to me. I was not interested in that. Even though I was fully participating in an African spiritual tradition, I was still in medical school. I was still a scientist. And to me, the weakness of most traditions, spiritual traditions, is that they seemed disembodied. They seemed disconnected to the real world,
Yeah.
to the conditions and the lived experiences of people right here on earth, right? It just always seemed escapist to me. And so it didn't appear, that title didn't appear. So I was like, this sounds like some hippie shit. It didn't,
The
but
hippies
it
are
wasn't.
better. The hippies try to find the answers.
Yeah, right.
Then
I was
when
like,
you said,
I need. Let me just say,
yeah.
I needed the science, and because I was not opposed to spirituality, what I was opposed to was spirituality that did not have any kind of scientific relationship, any kind of real historic relationship to the lived conditions of people on Earth. And when I finally cracked open the spine of the book, my agreement with this girlfriend of mine was like, look, this book has one chapter. If it does not hook me in the first chapter, I'm closing the book and I'm not going to open it again. And in the first chapter, in the beginning, we're all female. And the whole first chapter is this beautiful introduction into the science, the scientific basis for the necessity of goddess worshiping societies. There was a scientific basis for why human beings saw females as lichen, as a microcosm of the creative force and the creative energy of the cosmic mother. It was beautiful. And so I read the book all the way through like a novel. And then I read the book again all the way through like a novel. And then I read the book a third time live on Facebook in 2018.
That's when I
Facebook
was aware of it, yeah.
Facebook Facebook lost a lot of my recordings because I had intended in 2020 to just upload my Facebook recordings. But when I realized like half of the recordings Facebook had lost, I was like, well, you know what? I'll just go ahead and reread the whole book. So when you guys caught the read of the book on YouTube, that was my fourth time reading the book all the way through. And the only reason I did that the fourth time was because again, Facebook lost a lot of my recordings. So
I think
that
that
is
is when
how
you had shared it on Facebook, or I think shared it on Facebook or YouTube, the link, and that's where I downloaded it from. Although I haven't been able to read it, I just went through a few subjects there. I want to really dedicate my time and really read the books that all that you have recommended. So I have it safe in my collection. So thank you for doing
well,
that. It opened up a lot for me as well in my journey.
now I will tell you this, and it is my disclaimer to anybody that comes to the channel, because even 4 years later, after reading the book on YouTube, the Great Cosmic Mother is still the great attractor. New people who come to my channel, it is typically through the Great Cosmic Mother, right? My disclaimer for them, because the first time I read the book, I was like, oh, this chapter sounds good. I'll start here. Or, oh, this chapter sounds cool. I'll read this. And so I would like
Right.
skip around.
Okay.
The genius of Barbara Moore, who is the author. There's two authors cited, but Barbara Moore wrote the book. That's a story for another day. It's actually a little bit of a controversy. Monica Shu did all the illustration. She did
Mhm.
not write a single word in the book,
Okay.
even though she is credited with being the lead author. Now, this is through actual conversations with Barbara Moore's daughter and Monica Zhu's granddaughter. Both reached out to me when I read the book on YouTube. Neither of them had read the book because because Barbara Moore and Monica Zhu recently passed away within the last 2 decades. And so they were still recovering from grief. They were still recovering from the loss of their grandmother and their mother. And so both these women told me we've never read the book. And you reading the book online is the first time we're even hearing the content of the book. It's been too painful
Wow.
for us. Their stories were almost identical. But Monica Zhu's granddaughter lives in Switzerland, and Barbara Moore's daughter lives in Oregon. And anyway, so when I read the book, um, that's been the great attractor. I think more than any other book that I've read. Um, the other book by Mama Zogbe, The Sibyls and the Theft of African Prophecy by the Roman Catholic Church, that's probably been the second great attractor. The reason I'm saying that is because the first time I did skip around, I didn't read the book straight through, I skipped around, right? The genius of Barbara Moore as an author, when you read this book from cover to cover, like I read it to you guys, is that these aren't, some people write books, like they'll write a chapter and the chapter is like an essay. And then they go on to the next topic. And then they go on to the next topic. This woman was a poet. She was actually she was a published poet during the Beat era. I don't know if you're familiar with Beat poetry from like,
No,
you know, from the 1920s and, you know,
no,
all the way up through the 1960s.
not quite
Okay.
aware.
Well,
No.
Okay. Well, she was a very popular beat poet who ran in circles with giants like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and all of these guys. And so her style of writing, though very scientific and very historical, is extreme. It flows like poetry. It's extremely poetic, right? And the reason I say that, the reason I tell people don't skip through, don't pick your chapters and skip through. Listen to the book all the way through from beginning to end, because she literally weaves the chapters together all the way through until you get to the arrival which is the very last chapter, 52 chapters, that it is a beautiful execution of the totality of human history and how myth and how science and how history and how politics and how economics all played their role in the changing of myth and the changing of the guard and the changing of the hands of power from matriarchal societies to patriarchal societies. It is an extraordinary orchestration that she pulled off in the writing of this book. And so that's the thing that I would encourage you to do. I always tell people who are new to my channel, Great Cosmic Mother first. When you do the Great Cosmic Mother, listen from the beginning to the end. Don't skip around. Listen to the beginning. If you're driving to work, play it on your YouTube on your speaker. If you're washing dishes, you don't have to look at me read. Wash your dishes, let it play. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah,
Like make it
I
a
have
part.
done some
Make
of
it.
that while
Yeah.
listening to your
I mean,
playlist.
even me, like I read the book 4 years ago, but I still listen to chapters of this book as read by me 3, 4, 5 times a week easily because there's always something there. There's always something that you read, I've read 4 times, that you missed the first time or that didn't stand out as significantly as it does in this period where it makes more sense to your life. It's extraordinary. So that's what I would say there.
Absolutely. And in spite of all the podcasts, audiobooks, and everything, I still have that urge and like this drive. Like I have to have those books in physical. All that you have recommended. Even with all this technological advancement, yeah, yes, or for all my viewers. Because that it somehow I've been feeling that I just don't feel comfortable, even though I have listened to almost 200 podcasts now in last 3 4 years, and I still don't feel like I have learned enough just because the books are not in front of me. I don't know what
Yes.
it has to say. Maybe the physical world is showing its value and importance in its own way. Like it wants the physical, like our spirit wants
Yes.
that physical elements to be here.
Yes. It's not separate from what I was saying about the necessity of goddess culture that is embodied. It's not
Absolutely.
separate. So I also have been a teacher. I taught high school, I homeschooled my kids. And so there's this concept in science about identifying what kind of learner your child is. Is your child a linear learner? Are they a circular learner? Do they need more audio than they need, visual? Are they more kinesthetic learners?
Mm.
People of color, what scientists have found is that people of European descent are more linear in they're more quote left brain and linear in their learning styles, right? And people of color and the darker people are, for some reason, the more this applies, they are what are called circular learners. They need all of the input. They need to see it. They
Right.
need to say it. They
I
need to
feel that.
hear it. They need to hear themselves repeat it. And they need the kinesthetic aspect. They need to write the notes. They need to write in the book. They need to take the highlighter and highlight the section that really stands out to them. All of this becomes a part of the intake that is necessary for an idea to become a material force, a part of who you are, to the extent that it begins to now change your actual behavior. You see what I'm
I,
saying? And,
yeah, I feel you described the way I am actually. I do most of those things. I always
and that's
do.
most people of color. And so what you're describing is not foreign. There are so many people of color who are taking in ideas, concepts, new ways of thinking, but they do not have the kinesthetic, complete circular avenue to they don't have they don't have an outlet for the mass amount of information that they're taking in. They don't have an equal physical outlet for that stuff. They don't have, so you're saying you listen to over 200 podcasts. It's like information overload. You don't have a way in the world, in the material world, to take these ideas, these concepts, play them out, put them to use, apply them to your actual relationships, do
Right.
teach somebody else what you've learned so it becomes a part of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And so I was talking to my daughter. My daughter's 30. I
Hmm.
was talking to my daughter
Oh, my
because
age.
she is a, what, excuse me?
My age. She's my age.
You're 30?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
33. I'm 33 and
Yes. Okay.
2024 is going really well for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be 50 in 2 weeks. You feel me? So
Wow.
I'm talking to my daughter, and she is a product of this generation, generations where they're having tons and tons and tons of informational input, but they are
Heavy.
frustrated in their bodies because there is no outlet, no real consistent outlet for the processing of all of this information, right?
Totally.
and uh, and so when I counsel women in particular, um, I tell them to put your hands in or on something and transform it. It is the only way to it is the only way to process, even if you're not problem solving, to put your, I tell every woman that I counsel, every reading that I do, I don't care what their situation is, I don't care what they're calling me for. You need to take a pottery class. You need to take a pottery class, or you need to learn how to weave or crochet. Your hands need to be in something, preferably pottery. We need to reinstitute a physical, organic relationship with the earth itself and learn what it means, not ideally, with our actual hands, with our actual sweat, with our actual tears, or crying into the pottery or whatever, to construct something out of seeming nothing, to work with the mother's body, to work with the earth, to work with stones, to work with wood, and to take the mass of this big boundless energy and focus it into something that allows us. Because when we have an idea, when we have a concept that occurs to us, a eureka moment, that moment is demanding a physical expression. And we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do a physical, we don't even handwrite anymore. People get frustrated with me because I love typing, but I will still handwrite every single thing down first and then transpose it to the computer. They're like, why do you do that? It's such a waste of time. I was like, no, it's not a waste of time. I know what it takes to keep my mind sharp, and the different centers in my brain require that I write. Every time I don't write for a long period of time, I can tell, because I'm that in tune with myself after teaching for 30 years. I can tell when my brain is like, you're slipping. You need to write something. You know what I'm saying? If I don't journal for a month, I can feel a change in my brain. You feel me? And there's too much research out there that literally backs that up. When I was teaching high school, and none of the kids knew how to write in cursive, right? And there have been so many studies that talk about how there are different parts of the brain that are ignited when you write in cursive as opposed to just print. And none of these kids had learned to write in cursive. So I made it mandatory. I was teaching literature. I made it mandatory that they learn to write in cursive. And within a month, they resisted. They were like, no, don't make us do it. I was like, no, y'all gonna do it. It's just what it is. You're gonna learn
Even
to write in this class
like
because
in
nobody else is gonna teach. Within a month, these kids were like, this is so much fun. It makes writing so much easier. I write so much faster now. It's not as hard to write a paper. There is something said for what you were talking about. This could be a whole nother subject, but
before
it is
that,
not separate.
I
Well, I
just
was going to say,
add to your point is about writing and reading. In India, yeah, it has become a problem over the time that the education system is not focusing on all those little things, and the English has become so bad. It's all like now this. T talk to you later, TTYL, some acronyms,
oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
even the greatest of the educationists are doing those things. It's
These
really getting
abbreviations.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, again, I think it's an orchestration. I think it's deliberate, the way that education is being globally dumbed down. I believe it is
It's
purposeful. And the other thing that I think contributes to it again is that we are living in a period of human history where our access to information is more open and exciting. It is exciting
yeah.
how we can learn about the history of the world in minutes. research that I've done in the last 10 years would have taken me my entire adult life had the internet become a part of our life in the early 2000s. It
Right.
would have taken me a lifetime of research. That's what's exciting about this period. The disclaimer or the potential adversity of that is the fact that, again, you have millions, billions of human beings taking in massive amounts of information, watching massive amounts of commentators create, and so on. And there is not a equal energetic output of their material body. When I was a kid, you could study, but guess what? 4 hours a day after you did your homework, you were playing outside until the sun came down. And in play, you're learning how to work shit out. You're learning how to play with your friends without fighting. You're learning how to build a fort in a tree. You might fall down every now and again, but guess what? You get back up and figure it out. You are taking these concepts and working them out in the material world. The reason that I say this is not this separate from the discussion on what goddess worship means, why the urgency for reteaching humanity what God, living in matriarchal societies centered around goddess adoration has to look like, and what it can mean for transforming the planet, is to take this mass of genius, potential genius, out of the brains of human beings and into the material world in an integrated relationship, not only with the earth, but in a relationship with one another. The other downfall, if you will, of this particular period in human history that we're living in is they're saying that this is the first time in the history of human beings that there are more people living in cities than in rural areas. There are more people living in isolation, living by themselves in an apartment, in a room, or whatever, than there ever has been in human history.
Absolutely.
So now you're taking these people with all this potential energy in their head in terms of information, no outlet for it, and nobody to bounce those ideas off of in the real world. There's no sitting circles. Women used to sit in knitting circles. They weren't just knitting, they were working out ideas. They were talking about conflicts. They were teaching each other how to solve problems with a man. They were teaching each other, like, okay, my baby is having this cold thing, and one sister will be like, oh my God, there's an herb for that, or whatever. This was how we take what's here,
But
work it out among each.
yeah, but today it's more like gossip. It's more on the negative side. It's not about solutions, it's
I
just
understand that.
propagating
I
the
understand that. I understand
problems.
that. I understand that. What I
Yeah.
am saying again is for us to recreate in a more elevated and emerged way that the old ways that worship looked. Worship wasn't just sitting in a corner with our mandala beads chanting. Worship was not just that. Worship was also, ceremony was also harvesting together, reaping together. It was knitting together. It was sitting in ceremony together, creating pottery together. It was all of those
Absolutely.
things that we reduced to just work, we reduced to just the stuff we have to do. This was all embodied worship within matriarchal and goddess worshiping societies.
Like on
Work was
that
not
note,
seen.
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just saying, work was not seen as something separate from living in a harmonious relationship with the mother.
Right. And even I personally, it's been now 3 to 4 years, my journey with Kundalini Yoga and breathwork and everything to know with the goddess elements, the goddess energies, or all feminine elements in the cosmos. It changed me and certain things. I think I shared a very special video with you also long ago. Like what
Mm-hmm.
Om really means. I won't disclose
Yes.
it here, but
Yeah. It
after
was
that,
beautiful.
yeah, after that, I think I stopped believing in idol worship. I think if all the festivals, the way we used to celebrate, everything became so pale for me. Now I feel called to rewrite everything what truly Hindu culture meant or Sanatani culture meant, because again, it is pretty much written by the male. There
Yes.
is no
Yes.
yeah, so there is something in the astrology chart which where only the male yogi Vashisht was named, where Kundalini yoga was originated. I eventually found out that, so that's a special thing for me. But I was astonished that the homemaker or the consort goddess, the Pleiadian goddess Arundhati or Star Electra, as you call it, was never in the
Uh-huh.
chart. And I went searching where is the female's name. So that's when a lot of things became questionable for me. Why only a man's
Yes.
name comes first, and why
Yes.
where is the woman who
Yes.
has been with him to create this society, you know? So that,
Not just where is the woman, why is she not primary?
yeah,
Even when the female energy is acknowledged in any society, why is she always a secondary or a less than or a lower than entity within the creative process? And even in Hinduism, and I am not an expert, however, my teacher, when I took Ayurveda in college, and no, it was not a white person teaching me teaching me Ayurveda, which is I laugh about it because that's not uncommon here is to have white people teaching other people's culture. But my teacher, my mentor, um, her name was Dr. Light Miller. She was the descendant of a line of practitioners who were accredited with rescuing Ayurveda during the second British invasion when they were attempting to stomp Ayurveda out as a legitimate practice in India. But the thing that I really appreciated about her and about her courses is she talked so much about how the cultural how the culture, how the religion, how the social norms contributed to how the medicine was practiced in the society. It was not separate. Politics, history, the treatment of women, the origin of the tradition, the matriarchal origins of Hindu religion that too do not take a primary role in the teaching of Hinduism, right? She
exactly.
talked about that. She was a radical woman.
And
Yeah.
during my spiritual awakening, Ayurveda, even I took Ayurveda diet certification in November 2020, and that was a revealing moment for me that Ayurveda was the first invention that came through Hindu groups. It was not all these things that we see today. It was a very, very peaceful practice long back, all to do with
And the reason that that's important again is because if Ayurveda had such a primary role, then you have to acknowledge who created it, which is the mother. It's always the women that are the first herbalists, the first doctors, the first nurses, the first teachers, right? Everything that we learn from our mother first.
yep.
And so to X
So
out half of
we'll have to continue our meeting in the next one. Yeah.
okay, so just log off and go on to the next link.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to use the bathroom really quick and I'll do that.